Assalamu alaikum, yaxshi muslar. My name is Deeves. Most of you probably already know me from our Discord group, but if you are coming to this video from another source or straight from YouTube, I'm the creator of the Finding Uyghuristan Discord server, and this is a video about our weekly study topic, the Uyghur Arabic script. If you're interested in the topic of this video, that probably means you're interested in Uyghur issues in general, the Uyghur language in general. And if that's the case, you should definitely consider joining. We would love to have you. So we are going to start off by looking at the learning materials we're going to be using today. We're going to start off with Greetings from the Tekla Makan. I think most everyone should be familiar with this book. This is definitely the starting place for beginners, coming from an English-speaking background at least. We have referred to this text several times already in our weekly topic. Where we're going today is page 23, and I do mean as far as the PDF is concerned. That's why I'm putting 23 up here in my PDF reader, as opposed to going by the numbering system used by the book, because you see we start with little numerals and then we'll, so for simplicity and also ease of using your PDF reader, going to PDF page 23, and at the bottom of that page, we have a section called Writing and Pronouncing Uyghur. I'm not going to cover this in great detail right now. It's basically an introduction if you've never seen any written Uyghur before. It talks about the different options, a little bit about their history, not a whole lot, and some notes about spelling variations and that sort of thing. It's a good read. Nothing really super important to memorize about this. The more important information is going to be these two tables that we have. So here's table 1 and here's table 2, and then some notes following that. I would normally cover the content of Greetings from the Tekla Makan a little more closely, but I have my own sort of environment for teaching this concept that was adapted from this second table of Tekla Makan. Greetings from the Tekla Makan. So this is my interactive Google drawing that I originally made. That I originally made for my teacher, and I am going to be using to teach you guys today. So you'll see what we've chosen to sort of isolate here from Greetings from the Tekla Makan is this sort of section of these 4 columns, which are, I'm sure, are very mysterious to you now, but we'll be talking about what's going on here in a moment. But definitely do consult Greetings from the Tekla Makan. If you're still left with questions after the video. But beware, there are a couple mistakes. For example, down here, I do remember that they got this column wrong. I can't select it that way, but the Y column, or as we would say in Uyghur, ye, they just accidentally copied this other letter up here. That was extremely confusing for me when I started. So you've really got to watch out for things like that. I know there's at least one other mistake somewhere here, and I honestly don't know exactly where it is, because it's a dense set of information. But I already went through this entire thing, corrected these mistakes when I made this resource. So we, from here on out, are going to focus on this area, which I've linked in the Discord. I'm sure I will be including links in the video description, probably on the screen, this and anything else relevant throughout the video. So now we're gonna zoom in and start to unpack what we're looking at. Right away, I'm going to demonstrate how we can use this to be interactive. This is not just visual. Each of these letters are their own individual elements that we can make copies of and play around with to create words for ourselves. To do that, I'm going to make a copy of this so that I don't, this is the original. I have editing permissions, so I could accidentally mess up my original. You'll need to do this just to do anything with it. I'll just call this video demonstration, and I don't know why it wants to go there. I guess that makes sense. We'll put it there. That's fine. So give it a moment to do that. And now we have our own copy. Zoomed in a bit too far. And without giving any explanation right away, I'm just going to go ahead and write a very small word here using these letters in the Latin script, so you know what we're writing. We're going to be writing the word bash. It's a nice, simple word you will use plenty. The most literal meaning is head, but the reason it's on my mind is it's also the word we use for like beginning, the beginning of something. So, for example, this letter A, the beginning A would be called bash A. So it's on my mind for that reason, and it's a good word to learn and see. I'm going to zoom. That's a little further than I'd like to zoom in, but I'll take it. So I am going to quickly create this word using the letters here in the Arabic script. Right away we'll see Arabic script is right to left. If you're not already aware of that, that's why we have beginning on the right and further to the left, and why this is on the right. This is our first letter, B, and then I will take this A. We'll talk more about what's going on with A and some of these others without, with spaces missing in a bit. But we're going to bring this over here and connect them, and you'll see these connect together nicely, and all of these letters, if you look at them, every single one of them, I think without exception, is following this continuous line situation. So you can see where these lines connect to the lines of each other letters. It's almost like cursive in English, but this is just how it is all the time. This is not just in formal writing situations or anything like that. This is just how the script works. These letters connect to each other, except when they don't, which we're about to see, because we have B and A together, and this is an ending letter. Again, we'll talk about this more in a moment, but so I'm going to be pulling a solitary sh for sh, yağış, what we would say in Uyghur. Oh my god, I don't love Google Drawings, if I'm honest with you all, but it's the best tool I had available for this, and we're gonna stick that right there, a little further over, and I'll get that Latin script moved a little further up. So this is what it would look like. Obviously it wouldn't be colored, like I have it here, but bi, a, shi, bash. So this is potentially the first Arabic script word you're seeing an understanding letter for letter. So we've covered it goes right to left. There is a sort of system of connecting lines, but sometimes they don't. So what is going on here where this just goes straight up into the air and this new letter starts on its own? Generally, most of the letters have a beginning, middle, end form, as well as a solitary form. But some of them, like all of the vowels, I'm fairly sure, and not just them. You see here we have even less. But if I'm not mistaken, all of the vowels lack a middle form. And so what are you supposed to do if a vowel falls in the middle of a word like this one? You do exactly what we've done. You sort of treat this as the end of, I don't really know what you would call it, but like this flow, this particular contiguous line has ended because there's no middle option for A. So we have pulled in we would pull in a beginning shi if there were more letters. In fact, let's go ahead and show what that would look like. That's going to be very helpful. Let's go ahead and use the word başka, which means basically other. So like başka adam, another person. Başka harf, another letter. We use this word all the time as well. It's related to this word. So başka. So we're gonna take these first two. You know what? I'll do it from the beginning just to demonstrate. So copy, paste again with this, and you have to go over there. That's real annoying. Sorry about that. That's not gonna change. All right, B. and then copy, paste, a little further up. I really don't. It's close enough, but I hate it. Don't you hate it? I hate it. I'll speed this up. Okay. And then move this up a little bit. Shi. So instead of going for the solitary this time, this might make a little more sense. Instead of going for the solitary, our logic is we started with bi, and then our next letter was a. A sort of ends the flow. It has this effect on the general flow of the word. Because we're using this letter, we just stop and then start a new flow. We start a new continuous line that we're going to be using. So instead of using this solitary one, which we used because we had to start a new line but also finish it at the same time, so there's nowhere left to go. We're beginning and ending at the same time. We use this solitary shi. This time, we're going to come grab the beginning shi. Bash, shi. Bring it up here and continue our word after this. So bash. We would never leave the word like this. It's incomplete. You can see it has this little tail here hanging off, and after you've familiarized yourself a little bit, that will look very weird to you as well. So to finish off our word, we're going to go grab khe, which is... Just a quick note, I realized while I was editing that this was a mistake. This particular circled letter, I'd copied it from above. It's corrected in the current version of this now. We're going to grab khe, copy, paste, and bring it up here and add it to our word. All right, so bashq, and then again, we will pull in a final ah. And we have bashqa. That's close enough. I'm not going to mess with it. So, bash, bi, a, shi, and then bashqa, bi, a, shi, khe, a. I think my pronunciation is good on those. This is a lot of what you need to know to understand the Arabic script. Basically, I have a couple other things to cover, but the big idea behind Arabic script in general and in Uyghur specifically is this concept of connecting lines and then these interruptions and potentially needing to start a new line. It doesn't have any change of meaning on words or anything. All of these letters correspond one-to-one to their Latin counterparts. So none of these like dots you're seeing, symbols, these are just part of the letter. This is just how we recognize them. There's nothing more to know than that. And getting used to which symbol is which. Some of them are you could potentially confuse them for a while. And if you go through, you'll see they're grouped in ways that make sense together. These forms that look very similar to each other. Down here we have, so several letters have 2 dots, several letters have 3 dots. You'll get used to, which go with which and how to tell letters with similar symbols apart from each other. So we'll probably do some more examples in a little bit, but other concepts to cover. Let's talk about why these 2 letters and all of our vowels, I have 2 colors with them and instead of just one. That seems like some weird magic, but it's not. This is a choice on my part, and actually my teacher did ultimately say that she thought this was kind of a strange way to think about it from the perspective of someone who was educated in East Turkestan. They were sort of taught, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So this symbol in blue here that you can see is sort of added to this over here is what's called a hamza. And we have that in our category down at the very bottom, special letters, hamza. It only has a beginning form and a middle form. You will never end with a hamza. That would not make any sense. This is not really a letter so much. It is a character that you need to use like if you're using a keyboard to type Arabic script, you need to specifically hit the Hamza key. But this is sort of a note to the reader to sort of emphasize, to sort of create some emphasis where this is. This happens when we begin a word with any vowel, and in certain words, it happens in the middle of a word. So I'll give an example here in a moment of this. But so this, again, the way my teacher would think about it, the way a native Uyghur speaker is inclined to think about it, is to just think of this whole symbol as just beginning A, even though it is also kind of an ending A at the same time, you know, because right after this, that's why I have this in orange, same as this. If we take a word that begins with A, so I will do the word at, just because it's a simple one. It means horse, at. So I take this and paste it. I keep doing that because I don't want to drag it all the way. And then where's te right here? And we'll use the solitary one because that is the beginning of a new line or flow. I don't know the technical term for this. I just sort of think of it as a line, the beginning of the line, and the end of the line also at the same time. So it's just going to sit by itself. So at, that is how we write the Uyghur word at in the Arabic script. And you can see that this is sort of a beginning letter and a final letter at the same time. And sometimes you will see this as sort of like, for example, if I briefly pop over to the Wikipedia page on the Uyghur Arabic alphabet, this is what you will, all of these have sort of the isolated form, the lone form, but that's arguable. That's arguable because this is chosen, for example, if I zoom in to have, you know, the Hamza at the beginning, whereas that is not strictly the only way to have that sit by itself, which we'll see in some other examples soon. Like I'll try to make sure I get one of these in an example, but that's the wrong one. That's the one before I made changes. If you're sort of wondering, you know, why are certain letters ending and why are other ones, like why are certain letters missing middle categories? Why do certain letters have the effect of ending the flow and starting a new one? I don't know that there is really an intuitive answer behind that. There is something to be said about vowels, but it's definitely not just vowels. You also have these two very commonly, de and re, which are D and R in our English way of saying the letters. It is pretty arbitrary. You just kind of get used to which ones are which. There's nothing logical about it per se. That's just how it goes. All right, let's look at some examples of some of these little stray concepts that I've mentioned throughout that I do some examples of. So first of all, a hemza occurring in some other way other than at the beginning of a word. Again, this pops up anytime we have like a word that starts with a vowel, like at, okmah. If the vowel is the first letter of the word, it's just going to get a hamza. That's just how it's written. And that's one of the very few things that does not quite scan one-to-one from Arabic script to Latin script. We don't, as you can see, we just have the letter A. And that sort of goes a little more to my teacher's perspective of this sort of being a whole letter. I don't know how to tell you exactly to think about it. But it's much clearer when the hamza comes in the middle of the word, which is an unusual case, and that we will mark in the Latin script, and it will be very obvious. So we're going to take a word, a fairly basic word, mu'allim. Mu'allim. You can hear, it's a little hard to hear when you're saying it quickly, but instead of just mu'allim, it's mu'allim. It's, I don't know, it's a little subtle, but the technical term, I believe, for what is happening here with this little apostrophe that represents a hamza is called a glottal stop linguistically. So it's like in the English word if you're trying to say no, like you kind of have to put a stop in the middle, and give the second vowel another another sort of jump of its own, if you will. So I'm going to speed this up because this is a longer word, but let's go ahead and spell this out. All right, so here is where we have the hamza come in. So we have mu'allim. If we weren't using the hamza, then instead we would pull in this little solitary and it would look something like this, but you don't usually have two vowels together like this. When you have that happening, there is usually the involvement of the hamza. So let's go ahead and bring this back in and then just finish it out, and I'll try to keep that line consistent. All right. All right. Hopefully in a longer word, we can begin to see this pattern a little more as well. One that's short like this, it's a little hard to pick up on, but up here you can sort of see we have these color matching, obviously not one-to-one, they're two different words, but blue at the beginning, orange at the end, this sort of teal in the middle. Yeah, you won't have the benefit of the colors when you're just encountering text and writing text outside of this tool, but then hopefully the shapes are committed to memory. That's what's more important. Yeah, so mu'allim here. And yeah, other concepts we need to cover. So we do have these down here. These are sort of special cases. I have this little or in between these. So these are the letters. I do struggle to pronounce these separately from each other. They're very similar, but I believe it should be like I and E. I don't know. But we've seen these in writing plenty. These are sort of exceptions as vowels are concerned, because if it is at the beginning of a word, then you need to have the hamza. So for example, intayin is a word that starts with this. What's a word that starts with I? Itma has the hamza there. But if this is just, you will have this without the hamza in the middle of the word. Quite often for especially I, because it's just such a common letter and it's very minimal. You don't emphasize it all of the time when you say it. So, for example, like the word, let me go ahead and do the word intayin. That's going to be a helpful example for us. This is one of the ways to say like extremely, like very, very. So intayin, intayin, and then so at the beginning of the word, we will have I, and I'll speed up till we get to the end. Okay, so I was sort of an idiot when I chose this example. This is a middle E, not a bash E, but that's okay. I have another example I'll use in a second, but this is what this letter I would look like at the beginning of a word, starting a word. So intayin with the hamza, it gets a little bit of emphasis. Intayin. The next word I'm going to do is darja, which I'm not 100% on the meaning of, to be honest. I just looked it up in the dictionary and the meaning is not quite what I thought it was. But I'm just going to use it for the textual example because we're only really covering script here. So darja, and we're going to see the the bash I in the middle here after I get it put together. Okay, so here we have derece. And first, there's actually a couple things to notice about this, but here we have the bash-i, like I was talking about. So hopefully we can see the difference. Derece, you can also kind of hear it a little bit. I don't want to lean into that too hard, but intayin derece. The derece, the sound is almost not even there. You're not going to think about that every time you write this letter or anything. That's just to kind of help illustrate why we have these two different ways of writing it. It's much the same with I. This one, the little Latin E with the accent over it that we use. So that's why we have two forms for here. For these two letters. There's no other letter like that in here where I have the two different options with one, or the other depending on the situation. It's just one of these cases where it sort of broke the format a little bit of how to break this into columns. We also noticed that here we're using three solitary letters at the beginning of derece instead of any beginning letters, bash letters. And the reason for that, if we look at them one by one, we see that this is a situation where, first of all, di has no... The way that I have it written out, I will note this is sort of what I was referring to earlier when I mentioned greetings from the Teknomakan does this a different way than me. They have this over here in the beginning initial category. I think that's sort of misleading. I've put it as the sort of isolated because that's exactly why we're doing it this way. Di is one of these letters where it just ends the flow, and if it's also starting the flow, then it's just by itself. So it's alone. And we've brought it down and had it alone. Then we go to a. A is a vowel, and again starting and ending, but it's not a situation where we're using the Hamza thing. It's not, again, that's going to be pretty rare in the middle of a word. So we're just taking this little teardrop shape, which is the solitary version of a, and bringing it down, and same thing with the re. So all together, they just sort of chain together like that. That's how it works out in this word. And then we finally get to I, where they do have a bash form that does not end. It is ready to continue. So that's why the rest of this flows like our other examples do. You will run into, you'll get used to the combinations of these letters. It really becomes second nature very quickly if you legitimately practice it. But anyhow, one of the last concepts we need to cover is la. So this is just sort of for whatever reason, in Arabic script, when L and A together in that order, we use this sort of special single character for them. And I can kind of show you why. So if we take a bash li, copy, not cut, copy, paste, and put it over here, and then we go find an ending akhr a and bring it down here. We get where did it go? There it is. We get this funny horseshoe kind of shape, and that's fine for us, but for whatever reason we don't like that in the Uyghur script, in the Arabic script, I should say. And over time, I don't know. I suppose people just don't like to write it this way, so it sort of evolved into this. You can kind of see where that sort of resembles this shape being sort of written quickly or distorted over time. It has a ending form, so it can connect to letters before it, and then if it has to come by itself, this is what it'll look like. So let's use this in a word, and again, you don't want to see this. This is not the correct way to do it. I'm going to get rid of that. Let's think of a word real quick that uses the la. Let's do bala. That's a very simple word that we use all the time. That means child. So bala. Bala. I should enunciate it a little better. I have a bad habit of putting the stress on the beginning of words when they don't go there all the time. All right, so bala. Oh my God, we're going all the way up for bi. Beautiful. Worth the time. And then come over here and grab our isolated la, solitary la, yalguz, and put it on the end. And that is our word bala. So that's really all there is to that. It's just there are no other letter combinations like that. That's the only one we do it with. One more thing I want to cover, even though it's not really like a rule, it's just kind of a helpful tip that is not immediately obvious. It's going to have to do with this letter, si, which is an S in English, and this back down here to I again. You'll notice that this I is very small in its middle form, and in fact that's sort of a pattern I should have mentioned at some point that sort of almost all these letters follow, where the middle letter is pretty small, and it's these ending letters that are really big and kind of like explosive, almost very flourishing. I don't know what word to use, but just a helpful thing also to have in mind anyway when you're getting used to the script. But this is just a little small little fin here, a little curve, one of the smallest shapes it really could be. And then when we have si, this is just like a couple of these. Like you could see, you could almost confuse these for like 3 copies of the letter I. And especially when we have a word which we're about to spell, such as qism. This is a word for part, like parts, several parts of something. So birinchi qism is like part 1, first part, for example. I'll spell this out real quick, and then we'll see why it could be difficult to read. All right, so this is what the word looks like when finished, and especially if you imagine this without the coloring, you can see how this could be very difficult to read, even a bit frightening on first glance. I remember being very intimidated seeing this combination of letters and thinking, how am I possibly supposed to differentiate these? Until I thought about it a little bit, and there's really, when you see just a bunch of little fins, like a bunch of little waves on the ocean like this or whatever, there's really nothing that it can be apart from a combination of these 2 letters. You might still have to look kind of closely to parse out exactly what they're supposed to be. In certain fonts, the si, the S, will be kind of slanted a little bit, and that will help. Other times it's not. But look at all of the other letters, and see what combination of letters could possibly make this shape, and you'll find that if there's no other markings below or above, it really just has to be some combination of I and si. So keep that in mind. You'll get used to parsing it pretty quickly. I think there's a siren going by. Huge bummer. But yeah, I think that finishes all of the concepts I'm going to cover here. In this tool, I'm going to transition over next to, we're going to read some Uyghur text outside of this briefly, just to apply what we've learned. And I'm going to cover some other like tips and things to know about actually, the practical side of using the Uyghur Arabic script on a phone, laptop, by hand potentially, but I'm not really going to cover that too much. So we will transition here in a moment. So we have come back to Greetings from the Tekla Makan to cover reading Uyghur in the Arabic script, practice what we've just learned, and also to talk about something I forgot to mention prior to now. You'll see why it's quite easy to forget to talk about, but punctuation in the Arabic script is surprisingly very familiar. It functions basically the same as what you're used to in English and in Latin script Uyghur. Some of the only differences are we have this question mark here, which I probably didn't need to tell you that was a question mark. It is backwards. That's the only difference. We have periods that end sentences. We have colons, which do pretty much what they do in English. They are used a little more in like dialogue like this to sort of denote a speaker and then what they've said. It doesn't always look exactly like this, but that happens. We have M dashes, like long dashes that sort of do that as well. None of these things are specific to Arabic text or Uyghur in any way. One of the only things you might not be used to, you might be used to them if you use another language that uses these. But these, which I apparently are called guillemets, I don't know how to pronounce this. I've always called them angular quotes, but I couldn't find them under that name. So maybe I've been wrong about that. But they work just like quotation marks. A couple of languages use these in exactly the way that we use these sort of single, or not single, but these quotation marks that we're used to in English. It's not a big deal if you use regular English style quotation marks either, but this is sort of the standard. Other than that, there's really not much to know about punctuation. Punctuation is a pretty minimal concept in Uyghur overall. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and try to read these first two very brief sentences here. And we should be able to do that. I'm going to give an opportunity to pause and consult any one of the sheets or tables that has the various letters broken down into their different forms. And hopefully everyone watching can, by this point, at least get this converted into Latin style letters. And if you know a little bit of Uyghurcha, you should be able to understand what these two sentences mean, most likely. Very beginner level stuff. So if you're going to pause the video, go ahead and do that now. And assuming everyone who is going to do that has done that, we're going to go ahead and start. So from the right, of course, this is a name. It says Emily. That is an American name, or at least like an English-speaking world name, I should say. Emily, that's how this author has chosen to spell it. And what Emily is asking is Bu Nime. And that means, what is this? Bu Nime. Abliz is then responding. Abliz. And Abliz says, Bu kitab. And that means, this is a book. Bu kitab. If we scroll over to the left, we can see that the book is providing us the Latin transliteration of that. Bu nime, bu kitab. This name is not letter for letter. It's close. Emily, they've used a letter I or I on the end instead of Y, and I think that's a pretty sensible choice. Just as a heads up, that is not a letter Y. But yeah, that should probably do it for this little brief example. What I am going to look at next is an example of poorly rendered Uyghur Arabic script text, because that is a problem that really is a large part of why the Latin script exists at all. So here's an example. This is a screenshot of a website we'll be visiting soon in this video called lughat.com. Lughat is the Uyghur word for dictionary, so this is basically dictionary.com in Uyghur. Has a lot of languages. I don't really know what's up with it, honestly, but it's the best resource that I've used for Uyghur to English for reasons that I'll cover later. When I visit this site on my phone, everything shows up fine. Generally, in my experience, phones are more likely to handle Arabic script text well, but I've had issues on a phone as well. I've had issues at some point on every device I've ever tried to use for Arabic script text. So, God, it hurts my eyeballs even now to look at this. It just looks like kind of a mess, even though it's not the worst that I've seen. So I've imposed up here on top the correct way to write this. This says Uyghurcha. This is a word you'll need to know how it, to start with. Like we're about to cover keyboards, and you'll need to be looking out for this in language selections. So go ahead and pay attention to what that looks like, and make sure you can understand the individual letters. Uyghurcha. Down here, what's going on is it's not really connecting symbols properly. So this is what the Hamza looks like, first of all, if you just have it on its own. I think I excluded that from my chart because you never need to do this. I can't think of a single reason why you would do this on purpose ever. But that's how it shows up. And then sort of an isolated U. These two are connecting okay, but then for some reason this connection from the re to the u is broken. And the end of the word is mostly fine. I think that's also actually a messed up connection there. It's arguable. But anyway, so it just doesn't look right, and you might be beating yourself up if you're running into text like this, not realizing that the odds are stacked against you because this is incorrect text that you don't really have a chance of understanding until you're more familiar and can recognize what's going on here. So if your whatever device shows Uyghur text, Arabic script text like this, it's likely to do it in other places. But it varies a bit from website to website, app to app, device to device. And I can't really give you any definitive guide on fixing it necessarily. My best bet has been on Android mobile, but at the end of the day, you're eventually going to run into broken or poorly displayed Arabic script text. And you'll need to know how to deal with it one way or the other. And again, this is sort of the logic behind the existence, part of the logic behind the existence of the Latin script, and ultimately why I have opted to use the Latin script as sort of the official script of the Discord server, despite the fact that the Arabic script is much more sort of authentic to the Uyghur experience, because it does not have these issues, and you can have Arabic script text displaying perfectly fine on your own device, and then it does not display correctly for someone else, and you have no way of knowing that, etc., etc. So yeah, that is something to have in mind when you are navigating the world of Arabic script Uyghur text. Now we're going to move on to actually writing in Uyghur script, Uyghur Arabic script yourself, and using it, and what you need to know about that. All right, time to look at keyboards. I'm going to show you setting up the Uyghur keyboard on my Android phone. I don't have other devices to show you on, but it is pretty straightforward on both Windows and Mac computers and iPhones as well. So we are going to go to, I believe, General Management, Language and Input for me, and I have a bunch of languages set up here. This is the one we want. I'm going to remove this one so I can show you putting it back. Before I do, let's look at the name. You can see the word we were looking at a moment ago, Uyghurcha, in the Arabic script there. And I kind of forgot that word was next to it, honestly. That says jungle, which means China, and that bothers me a little bit, but that's fine. We're going to go ahead and remove that. All right, we're going to add a language, and we are going to scroll. Oh, wait a minute. We need to, in my case, I need to go to all languages because it's just showing suggested languages at first. This is like, I don't know, this is a Samsung phone, and Samsung definitely sort of inserts itself in the way a little bit. If you're using just like the Google keyboard, I had a little bit smoother of an experience. But I haven't been able to get that set up on mine, neither here nor there. But I'm going to go all the way down past any of these Latin script languages. And I'm going to stop when I get, here's some Cyrillic ones. There might be a Cyrillic script Uyghur keyboard. I really have no idea. I wouldn't be able to say. But yeah, so here we are. It's actually the first one, it looks like, of the Arabic script languages that we encounter. Maybe because I've used it before. It doesn't say Jongo anymore. I wonder what that's about. But I'm going to go ahead and select it. Okay, there's the Jongo. So set as the default language. You probably don't want to do that. None of your software is really going to be set up to handle that. And also the spell check is a little bit wonky. I'm going to keep current, not set as the default. But here it shows up in my languages now, and I'm going to move it back to where I had it. I'm going to hit apply, and I will be done. And now I'm going to pop over to this Google Doc Immediately, it actually has me on the Turkish keyboard right now, which I don't really use, but it's there. If you're using a Google keyboard, it'll be a little different. The way I switch between languages is to sort of hold the space bar and then slide. So that brings me over to Uyghur. And this is pretty similar to what you will see on any key. There's going to be some small variations from layout to layout, device to device, but many of the letters are set up to be in the same place as they would be on the QWERTY, like English Latin script keyboard. Not all of them, but enough of them. You'll sort of reach, like, eventually this will happen to you. You'll be trying to type in English but be on your Uyghur keyboard and not realize it, or vice versa, and type some of the same letters with, for a second before you actually realize that you need to switch. But not all of them are in the same place, obviously. And also there's, in my experience on any mobile Uyghur keyboard I've used, there's not quite enough space for all of the letters. So you will have some, like you'll see here, that you need to sort of hold and then choose the letter as sort of a secondary key, just because there's not enough space. So if I write, I guess I'll go ahead and write Uyghurca just to start with. And one key to be aware of, if I just go to type Uyghurca, this is almost right, but not quite. For one thing, it's very small. I'm sorry about that. I don't know if I can zoom in. So we're missing something important here, and it'll especially be important for using the dictionary later, which does require you to spell things exactly. And that is the Hamza. So that is that little symbol. It's going to be next to my backspace. The very bottom right key on my keyboard here is my Hamza. So now that is correct. You will notice that I did not have to mess with any of the different forms of the letters. When you are typing in Arabic script, the software, and I do mean any software pretty much, except when it fails, but whatever platform you are typing on, it is meant to be that platform's responsibility to use the correct form of the letter based on the other letters around it. Even my car does this correctly most of the time when I'm like listening to Uyghur music, for example, and it's showing the name. And you'll see as you sort of backspace that the letter will change, because now it's saying, okay, this letter ch is the final letter, so we'll use the final form, or this would be the isolated form of the ch. Ri doesn't change, but then you can see it change as you go and do that. So that is very handy and honestly reduces the burden of really understanding Arabic script if you don't ever intend to like handwrite. If you do think for any reason you might want to be able to write Uyghur script by hand, you should probably practice that a lot. I myself just copied word for word a lot of the dialogues from Greetings from the Tekla Makan. But, handwriting is much less relevant than it was in the past, and you can probably accomplish quite a lot of your goals just using a keyboard. So you want to be able to read those different forms, and ideally you want to understand what's going on, but all you need to do is type the letter. So I'll do another word here. I'm going to do the word yezak, because we're about to use that in a moment. So yezak. Remember, this means writing or script. And if I get rid of that underline, yezak. That's pretty much all there is to using the keyboard. Unfortunately on mine, I don't have all of the punctuation I need, and that is really upsetting. I'm missing the angular quotes. These are not quite the right size. I mean, they would work in a pinch, but they're big and tall for some reason, as opposed to what they should look like. Again, if I could, I've just had trouble getting another keyboard installed, and I've just decided not to mess with it. This works for me. I go look up these symbols when I need them. If you're using the Google keyboard, these should be available to you. In a pinch, you could use these potentially, little brackets. And also the question mark is not there. Quite frustrating as well. If you're not using the Samsung keyboard, yours should be there and be fairly obvious. Make sure to check any secondary menus like I'm switching between now. Your comma looks a little different, you'll notice, from the comma you're used to. If I switch to a different language, they show up a little differently, but they do the same thing. But there's not really much to know about using the keyboard besides that. And if you're using Windows or Mac, you just go into your language settings, find it on the list. You should be able to find like a diagram with your keyboard layout. If nothing else, go back to that Uyghur Arabic alphabet Wikipedia page. I definitely saw there was at least a keyboard layout, like a physical computer keyboard layout, towards the bottom of that page. Or you can Google, I think there is an on-screen keyboard app on Windows, at least, probably on Mac as well, that will show you what your keys are mapped to. And yeah, you'll figure that out. It is a little different from platform to platform, so you'll need to get to know it a little bit. Phone is the easiest because you have the layout right in front of you, so you do not have to figure out what you're looking at. It's directly in front of you. Spell check is generally pretty whack too. It can be helpful, but it has caused me just as much problems as help, for sure. It's definitely corrected words that I did not need corrected, and sort of thrown me off. But with that, we're going to go ahead and transition to using like an app or a website in Uyghur. So this is the dictionary that I was mentioning before on their mobile site. Lughat.com has treated me better than any other platform so far as a dictionary. Right now it's set from English to Uyghurcha, and you will see Uyghurcha is showing up correctly now that I'm on my phone. I want to go the other direction right now. I want to go from Uyghurcha to English. There are some other options here too. I think that's Chinese. Maybe not from Uyghurcha, actually. My bad. I thought there was Arabic and Russian as well, but I'm wrong about that. Never mind. But let's use that word we were just looking at. Yezhiq. You'll see as I start typing, options will come up. If I make a mistake, all of my options go away. I can't just like search for a similar word. Like, let's say I accidentally just left this in and I searched for this. Nothing is going to... it does actually give you some suggestions, so my bad. But sometimes you'll think that a word is not in the dictionary and then realize you're not spelling it correctly. Maybe the source you're reading from has not spelled it the same way the dictionary has, so you'll learn how to try different things in those cases. There are occasionally spelling fluctuations like any other language. But if we actually go to the word we wanted, which was yezhiq, then we will go ahead and select that option from the list, and we get this definition: writing, script, letters. And what's really the best about this dictionary, honestly maybe the single best reason to learn Arabic script, at least at the beginning stage, is to get these additional examples that use the word. So that first example, Uyghur yezhiqi, is Uyghur script. That's one way to say it. What is this one? Yezhiq islah klish. Okay, so script reform. That makes sense. That would have been an example because that has happened. The alphabet has gone through alphabet or script reform. Yezhiqtali, the sort of the written language of writing, I suppose, literally. And I didn't know that. At the bottom there's another meaning. Parchment is an option. Sometimes they're not as detailed as this, like that little stub definition at the bottom there. You'll run into that sometimes. But that's pretty much using the Arabic scripts online, and as you see, the text is automatically being aligned to the right. I don't often use Arabic script in like search engines or anything, but let's go ahead. I mean, it's worth it sometimes. Like, let's try that. If I just search the word yezhiq in sorry, I'm revealing myself as a DuckDuckGo user here. I get some results, so I can go to the Uyghur Wikipedia, which there is. I kind of forget it's there because I was not really able to read it for a while. I'm probably getting to the point now where I can get some use out of it. So there is an area of the internet where this is in use. It's not that we never use Arabic script on the internet. And in this case, everything is showing up for me correctly, which is nice. There are some Uyghur websites, like I'm going to go to one that you'll probably want to make use of eventually, Ilkitab. I don't believe there are any web addresses, I should note, in Uyghur. I've never typed Uyghur script in the actual address bar to go to a website. They always have that in Latin script, and I think that's a requirement of the internet, but I don't know. But you can see even the title here at the top of the page, Il Kitab. This is sort of like ebook, essentially, is what they're saying. And this is a place where you can find books, magazines. It's where I found the Ana Yurt novel. I assume there's much more good stuff here than I've really even touched. But to even know where to download a book, you need to get a little familiar with the Arabic script. So if I just want to download this first thing I find here, Uyghur, this is in a bit of a stylized script, but I've kind of gotten used to it, so I can sort of read it. I still have trouble with it, though. It gets really abstract sometimes. But I'll go ahead and click on this link. It's going to take a second to load because it loves me. And it'll take us to the page for it, some meta information. This button here is saying so that's saying, basically giving you the option to report false information, like if some of the information is wrong. And on this site, this is the last concrete example I give. But here in red, kitabni buyardin chishurun is to say, download the book from here, basically. And we can click that, and then I will get a PDF download started. So that is everything I have to cover. Huge thanks to anyone who made it to the end of this. You must be very committed, and I really respect that. I just want to quickly say thanks to everyone who's part of the Finding Uyghuristan group for contributing what you do and like making whatever it is that we're doing possible. Yeah, it really means a lot to me, and I think that there are really good things on the horizon. Yeah, check all of the learning channels at the bottom of the channel list for more topics related to the Uyghur language, practicing the Uyghur language, questions about the Uyghur language, etc. Sizlarni suyman, yaqinda ko'rishaylik. Xo'sh. I'll talk to you all soon.